You have one breaker panel, not two, not a backup, one. And every morning before your feet even touch the floor, something starts pulling current from it. Not the mortgage, not the market, not the emergency you've been bracing for all year. Something smaller, something you'd never think to blame. What tie to wear, what to eat, which lane to merge into, whether to answer that text now or later, whether to open the banking app or leave it closed one more day. Each one draws a few amps. Each one feels like nothing. And that's exactly the problem, because nothing, repeated 300 times before lunch, adds up to a system running hot long before the day has even started to matter. Somewhere in a house you've never seen, a homeowner is doing the same thing without knowing it. He's got a panel in the basement, one main breaker, a fixed load it can carry, no more, no less. And instead of reserving that power for the furnace, the one appliance that actually keeps the house alive through winter, he's got a dozen small things plugged in and humming all day. A lamp here, a space heater there. A fan running in a room nobody's in, none of them dangerous alone, but by 4 in the afternoon, the breaker is warm to the touch. And when the furnace finally calls for power, right when the temperature drops, right when it matters most, there's nothing left to give it. That's not a story about electricity, that's your Tuesday. Here's the part almost nobody says out loud. Decision fatigue isn't a mood. It's not a feeling you push through with coffee or a pep talk. It's a measurable draw on a finite circuit. Researchers who study poverty have found something unsettling, that people forced into constant small financial trade-offs arrive at the checkout line with less mental energy left to resist the exact impulse purchases sitting right in front of them. The poor aren't undisciplined, they're overloaded. The breaker trips at the worst possible moment, right when the big decision needs the power most, and it trips silently, with no warning light and no alarm. And if that's true for someone counting coins at a register, it's true for you counting decisions before your first meeting of the day. Every trivial choice you make is a small appliance plugged into the same panel that's supposed to power your future. What to wear, what to eat, which app to check first. None of them evil on their own, all of them draining. And the bill doesn't arrive as a number on a statement. It arrives later, tonight, as the moment you're staring at your budget or your business plan or the conversation you've been avoiding and you simply can't focus. Not won't, can't. The circuit's already spent, and no amount of wanting to concentrate will put current back into a breaker that's already tripped. This is the tax nobody sends you a notice for, no auditor knocks, no statement arrives in the mail. It's paid in silence, in the exact currency that builds wealth, clear-headed judgment, and it's usually paid before 9 in the morning, by people who think they're just getting through the day like everyone else. So here's where it gets interesting, because the fix isn't willpower. Willpower is the thing being drained. You can't use the drained resource to solve the draining. That's like trying to run the furnace off the same breaker that just tripped, flipping it back on and hoping this time is different. You need a separate circuit entirely, one that doesn't ask the main panel for anything. What separates people who quietly build wealth from people who quietly bleed it isn't intelligence, and it isn't income. It's wiring. The wealthy don't have more amperage than you. They've simply rerouted the small appliances onto a different line, one that runs on its own, without ever asking the main panel to weigh in. That's what a habit actually is, not a personality trait, a dedicated circuit. The same clothes worn on rotation, so the wardrobe stops holding a vote every single morning. The same breakfast eaten without negotiation, because negotiation is exactly what costs the current. The transfer to savings that fires automatically on payday, before the money ever touches a decision-making brain that's already been asked to choose 40 things before 9 a.m. None of this is restriction. It's load balancing. Every trivial choice you eliminate is amperage returned to the circuit that actually needs it, the one that negotiates the raise, that says no to the wrong deal, that sits in discomfort long enough to make the right call instead of the easy one. But here's where it gets harder before it gets clearer, because rerouting a circuit isn't instant. There's a period where the old wiring still pulls at you. You'll reach for the decision out of habit, not need, checking the same feed twice, debating a purchase you already know the answer to, letting a 5-second choice stretch into 5 minutes. That's not failure. That's exposed wiring still carrying old current out of memory. The homeowner doesn't fix his panel by feeling guilty about the lamp. He fixes it by walking down to the basement and physically moving the wire. And there's a version of this that goes even quieter, even more dangerous, because it doesn't look like fatigue at all. It looks like busyness. It looks like a full calendar and a full inbox in the sense that you're doing so much, surely something is being built, but activity isn't the same as amperage reaching the furnace. A house can be humming with lamps and fans and background noise and still freeze solid the one night it actually gets cold. Motion without direction is just another way of draining the panel. It simply feels more productive while it happens. Think about what that means for the version of you standing at the fridge tonight, deciding for the fourth time in an hour whether to order out. Or scrolling a cart at midnight, adding things you won't remember by morning. Or saying yes to something out of sheer depletion rather than actual desire. None of that was weakness. That was a tripped breaker, doing exactly what a tripped breaker does under too much load. And you can't shame a breaker into working harder. You can only stop overloading it in the first place. The people who look from the outside like they have unshakable discipline around money usually have something quieter and far less impressive sounding than discipline. They have fewer decisions, not more resolve, fewer forks in the road to begin with. They've built a house where the furnace never has to compete for power because the small appliances were never plugged into that panel to start with. They moved them somewhere else entirely, onto automatic transfers, fixed routines, defaults that don't require a vote. And this is the part that should sit with you longest. The cost of decision fatigue was never really about being tired by the end of the day. It was always about which version of you actually shows up for the moment that matters most, the negotiation, the investment, the conversation that quietly changes the next 10 years of your life. If that version of you keeps arriving already depleted, worn down by noon over things that never deserve the current, it isn't because you lack discipline. It's because nobody ever taught you that the panel has a limit, and that limit is not up for negotiation. Once you see the panel, really see it, the way the homeowner finally sees his own basement, you can't unsee which appliances never belonged there in the first place. The furnace was always waiting for its turn. It was patient about it, the way anything essential tends to be, sitting quietly in the background while smaller things burned through the exact power it needed. The only question left is whether you'll finally walk downstairs, find the wire, and give it what it was always supposed to have.